Hello. So maybe some of you saw the previous video where I kind of showcased the work in progress I was doing with this city generator. But it's finally, I think, kind of done. At least the first version. It has outer walls, it has rivers. I improved a lot of the performance issues that it had. I fixed some bugs, and I think it's really good to go. So I put it in Gumroad. If you don't want to pay for it, it's free, but if you are thankful for the work I'm sharing, feel free to pay whatever you want. I'll post the link in the description of the video, and I'll show the page at the end of the video. But I wanted to show more or less this video more than as a promotion. It's more to show how it works and how you can create cool stuff with it. So first, when you're starting to, this is how you see the generator when you load the blend file. I recommend having Blender 3.4 because of the mix color nodes change that break, so you will have to fix all the textures, but in case you don't want to change, you will know what to fix from previous versions. So before you start editing the map, what I strongly recommend is that you enable hide buildings so you don't have to deal with a lot of things being generated as you work. So the way this works is that it needs a mesh to generate. For now it needs a plane, but it doesn't need to be perfectly planed. But let's add, for example, I'm going to add a plane, scale it a little bit. I'm going to generate, for this time I'm not going to create a city too crazy, but I just want to show more or less how you can work with this. And basically the shape can be whatever you want. It has some constraints, but let's say you use this. I do recommend adding some subdivisions for the terrain calculation, otherwise if the map has too little detail it can go a little bit wonky. But you can play with the settings as much as you want. And let's say, for example, I want to add a hill up here. So I can enable this. There you go. And let's say we can put a hill up there. And I want to add some subdivisions here. Okay, so this is a basic layout for the city. It's not something too complicated, but I don't want to get too crazy with this demonstration. So you generate there, as you can see the hill is accounted for. Now we can add the river. So the new features are the outer wall and the river. Because the river looks so wonky because it has so little geometry, but you can subdivide it a little bit and it will work way better. The more geometry you have, the better things will look. But we can make the river a bit bigger. Let's say too wide, maybe too much. 1.5, like that. And you can displace the river location. Like, let's say I want to put it in -20. You can rotate it. And you can play around with the distortion the river has. Where is it, the settings? There. River size, river rotation, river location. Basically this is the pivot point for the river. And river distortion. You can make it a bit crazier. And maybe in the future I will allow to do a curve if this tool proves to be very popular, but for now I think this is more than enough. And there you have your river, and now you have to calculate the roads. Let's place where we want the roads to go. And basically what you do is you have the number of roads you have, like the main roads, they all exit the city. So if you want less, as you can see, when you have a road that is too close to the being aligned with the river, is going to have this issue that it goes a little bit wonky. But that's where the road separation parameter comes in, and you can, oh sorry, I'm doing the wrong thing. Roads rotation, sorry. Road rotation, what it does is, it's the rotation that is in separation between each of the main roads. So as you can see here, you have a very big space without one, so you can play around with the roads rotation until you have more evenly distributed roads. If this is hard to see, you can switch to map mode and it will make the roads easier to see. As you can see, everything looks a bit pixelated because it has very few polygons to work with, but if you go to terrain resolution and increase the number, as you can see, the textures get higher quality because it has more geometry to work with. When this happens is because there's too many roads too close to each other, so one option you have is that you can move the point of spawn of the roads. So let's say I want to move the roads. Basically what you move is the terrain square, so let's move it closer to the hill. Maybe it's too little, let's move it by 30. There you go, and now we have that issue over there, so you can play around. Like, what I'm going to do is rotate the river. This is a bit slow because I added way too much polygons. Let's go back, even if it looks a bit pixelated. You can increase it at the end once you're happy with it. And I'm going to rotate the river. Oops, wrong parameter. River rotation. There you go. So let's make it go a bit more like that. I think it looks cool. It generates that crazy stuff there. Let's rotate it a little bit more. There you go. You have this super long bridge here, but it can be interesting. As you can see, the calculations are not perfect if you go too crazy with the distortions, but at the current time is as far as my knowledge goes. So you have this, let's move it away. To be honest, I don't mind showing how wonky it can get because I don't want people to be deceived like this is a super professional tool and then be disappointed. It's like, yeah, it's not perfect, but I think it for the basic usage that is creating quick maps for adventures, I think it's more than satisfactory. There you go. So I know it's like, oh yeah, why we should pay you for this. It's a tool I made for fun. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, feel free to ignore it. So we have the basic setup. We can add a little bit more geometry to make the maps a little bit nicer. And now we can play with the terrain height and stuff like that. So terrain height and terrain scale, what they do is a distortion you apply to the terrain. For example, if I do 4, as you can see, it distorts a little bit more, and you can play around with how much distortion you get. The bigger the terrain scale goes, the more distortion is going to add, so it's making it all a little bit more textured. And the more of the terrain height, the more exaggerated that texture is going to be. I recommend not going too crazy. Usually values between 2 and 4 for terrain scale are fine. And terrain height usually with 4 or 5 is alright. But it gives you a little bit of variation without going too crazy. Okay, so now you can see all these additional roads. These are called the secondary roads, and basically you can control how many of them you see by playing with this parameter. Usually I think that depending on the amount of main roads you have, you can play with more or less percentage of the secondary roads. And you have control of the seed. If you, for example, are like happy with the percentage of them, but you are not happy with the distribution, you can play with this, with the secondary roads seed. I put tooltips on everything, so it should be self-explanatory, but this allows you to pick different configurations of the secondary roads. Like this one, for example, I like. And okay, now we have our city. I think this looks cool. This serviceable for my campaign. I know it's a little bit too symmetrical, but cities should have some organization. So now we can switch on or off the height buildings. What this will do is it now generates all the buildings. It's going to take a while because it's generating a lot of geometry, but we can play with that because right now the map is super packed. Okay, so now you have all these buildings in the city and stuff. So let's start lowering unless this is what you want, but usually I don't think a city this packed looks realistic. So what we can do is start playing with, for example, road separation. As you can see, many of the houses overlap with the road, so we are going to increase the road separation. The road separation, what it does is say, okay, how much space between the road and the houses should be. So now by adding more, it's calculating again, and it's going to lower the density of the houses and also give the roads a bit more breathing room, which I think is good. Okay. It's still too close, so let's add a bit more road separation. Let's say 1. It's calculating again. Still we have too many houses, but all this loading is only happening when you are changing stuff. Once you have the map, it's going to be way faster. So we have that, but as you can see, it's very evenly packed. And I want to be less houses the closer you get to the walls, so that we can do it with the density falloff, which is here. Density falloff, what it does is that it says, okay, from the border to the center, how much do I eliminate? Right now it's super low, it's 1.1, but let's say you put 1. This is going to generate way less geometry. You can see, but you can make it even bigger. Let's say 5, and then as you can see, it's very sparsely populated, which it might be too much for this city. Let's try a middle ground, 2.5. I think this one looks better. So as you can see, you have natural plazas and places and separations, but you can basically customize it as much as you want and get the feeling you want for the city you're working on. As well, for this demonstration I'm creating quite a big city, but you can, if you're working on a small town, you're not going to have to wait this much. And I'm happy with this layout, so we can play around with, for example, let's switch on off map mode so you can see the buildings better. Basically what it does is the houses are generated with a house generator. The roof is procedural and it uses a lot of geometry. Basically anything you want to customize is in this folder in buildings. And the houses are built like by parts, but you've probably seen several tutorials already of how to do that. The important buildings are like these big ones that I customized and custom created. Like for example, you will see that there are some that look like inns, that are like small houses connected with walls, and they have like stables and stuff like that. So those are called important buildings, and basically you can have more or less of them. For example, right now I'm only on 0.4 density, but if you have a city that is going to have like a lot of guilds and temples and stuff, you can increase these significantly and you will have more of them spawning. So you can see now we have a lot more towers and churches and temples. And if, for example, the density is you're happy with, but you are not happy with the ones you got, you can pick in the important building seed, you can change the seed to get a different selection of buildings. Okay, that looks alright. So let's say you want a little bit more separation between the houses. Maybe they are too close here, like this one is too close to the other ones. So what you can do is play with house separation and say, okay, let's add a bit more separation between them. This would make the city feel less packed and have more space between the houses. This can work for older cities where the houses were one on top of each other. But if you want to have like a very densely packed city, you can play with the house separation value. And that gives you more or less the city. We have like all these towers, this is probably a city of mages. And one final thing you can customize is the outer walls. So you can decide if you want to have outer walls or if you don't. If you decide you don't, you disable the generate outer walls and it will completely remove it. But if you have it enabled, you also have a parameter to say, basically the outer wall will automatically put a gate whenever there's a connection, the road crosses the path of the outer wall. For example, you have two gates because you have two roads going out and stuff like that. You can play around with the roads until you're happy with the gates you get. And it will also leave a space open for the river to come out. And the other thing you can customize is the amount of towers you have between on the side of the wall. Basically, this parameter allows you to have more or less population of towers, as up to 1 is considered like a percentage. Let's say these are maybe too few, I want to have more, and it will evenly space them alongside the wall. So what are the uses for this? You might be thinking. Basically, you have two uses. One is to take cool screenshots, or if you have an animation project and you want to have a city, there you have it. Or the main usage for this is the map mode. Is this thing, this option at the bottom. Basically, what it does is aligns all the houses vertically, so you don't have them rotating. And if you use the camera map, you can take a screenshot of the render of the map and use it for your adventures or for your supplements or whatever you want to do. Basically, as you can see, because the map ID is quite big, the entire map is not fitting, but you come to the camera options and play with the orthographic scale. And there you have it. We can move now the camera a little bit to center the map. And then if you render this, you'll have a cool image of your map where you can put numbers, like you can put information, you can put tooltips, you can add details by hand if you want. You can do anything you want with this. As you can see, this map looks a bit too square, but let's say I want to have a more rounded map. If again, as I said, I recommend lowering the terrain resolution before you're going to work on this stuff, and probably disable the buildings. But let's say you want to have a more organic looking city, you can delete all of this. And I also want to address an issue that I don't know how to fix, so I think it's important that you know. Let's say you have a circle and, well, you want to have a more circular shape, and let's go back to this way. You want to do it more like this. So what you can do is, if you do grid fill and then subdivide it a bit, now you have a more organic looking city, and then all you need to do is play around with the main square position. I put it there, and maybe have less roads. Let's say 4 and play with the rotation. Like that. No, maybe like that. And then I can maybe move it that way a little bit. Sorry, my voice is rough. I've been quite sick lately. So you can grab the river and say, okay, I'm going to rotate the river this way. I'm going to put it there. And then move it down there. So you have like this. This part, I'm going to make the river a bit smaller. So this is going to be a quite smaller city. And I'm going to add some river distortion. Maybe like that. I think that looks cool. You have the river, you have like the towns. This can be like the Loudon side. So you enable the buildings now, and you have a city. And then you play. Okay, maybe the fall off is too big because for a city this small. So you can put 0.5. Maybe there's too many important buildings. Let's reduce it a little bit. And as you can see, it was very quickly to create this cool looking city, and then I just can you can just with the camera again play with this. If I pick the right camera, and there you have it. Then you have now a small town that can be like a place for your adventures to gather or your adventure to start. So it's very, very quick, and you can play around with the geometries very, very easily. The only thing it needs is a planar geometry. It won't work if it's like a sphere or something like that. And yeah, you can, as you saw how easy and quick I could generate a complete new city, and you have the different modes and stuff. So basically that's what I want this tool to be. It's a tool for RPGs and stuff like that. And yeah, hopefully you will like it and find some use for it, and let me know if you have any feedback and stuff. So yeah, bye bye.